All right, live. Part two, lesson two of joint fundamentals, service capabilities, limitations, and interdependencies of the services. Total force is where we left off. The links below will take you to the official websites for the Air National Guard, the Air Force Reserve Command, and the Civil Air Patrol. Open and bookmark the links for future reference. The U.S. Air Force and U.S. Space Force will take somewhat, perhaps significantly different approaches to a total force concept. The USAF's total force construct is well established. The USAF's is still being shaped at the congressional level. A Feb 2020 Department of the Air Force report to Congress, Comprehensive Plan for the Organizational Structure of the U.S. Space Force, revealed the state of thinking on the subject. DoD cannot execute its military space missions today without Guard and Reserve. They are a vital part of the total force space team. At the same time, the Space Force has the unique opportunity to consider a clean sheet 21st century approach to human capital management, specially designed for the space mission set and the needs and preferences of the current generation. More detail on Guard and Reserve components will be contained in the Space Force Total Force Management Plan report due to Congress on March 19, 2020. So that right there is just further rationale for updating the course. The report mentioned in the above quote was submitted in March 2020. As of May 2020, it is still pending approval. Whether the USSF or USAF will have its own Guard and Reserve or leverage needed skill sets from those components in the USAF or establish a different construct entirely is yet to be determined. The U.S. Air Force flies, fights, and wins daily as a total force almost across the board. Active duty Air National Guard and Air Force Reserve forces, as well as U.S. Air Force civilians and Civil Air Patrol personnel, are leveraged daily worldwide. They are all airmen, pilots, ground crew, and support personnel from the Total Force Service serve side by side in joint operations across the globe. I would say around the globe because the Earth is a sphere and supposed to flat, but just preference. Integrating the total force requires significant coordination, but this is the norm for the USAF. Just as the U.S. military fights jointly as a rule, the U.S. Air Force fights with its organic total force capability, and this brings significant benefits. For example, many Guard and Reserve units lend stability and experience to active duty counterparts that may be more vulnerable to personnel rotation. In the video below, an array of aircraft and military services are on full display in the video of Exercise Red Flag 16-1 at Nellis Air Force Base. U.S. Air Force Master Sergeant Bert Trainer describes how training in integrations as one force is key to the Air Force mission, illustrating the importance of the total force concept. While you watch the video, consider what examples from your daily experience highlight the value or challenges with total force integration. So there was an RFI that came out a little while ago about how much does your lesson talk about total force integration. Here it is, right here in joint. Required materials Air Force Policy Directive 90-10, Total Force Integration, 2019, read paragraphs 1 through 2. To learn more, Air Force News Services, Air Force continues to pursue total force integration, 2016, pages 1 and 2. And of course, I'm watching the clock because 15-minute video is what we're shooting for. U.S. Space Force capabilities and presentation of forces. On December 20th, 2019, Congress voted to enact the legislative proposal Space Policy Directive 4, drafted 10 months earlier, that established the United States Space Force, USAF, as the sixth branch of the U.S. Armed Forces. According to Space Policy Directive 4, the USAF shares organize, train, and equip responsibilities with the with the other services, not the Air Force only, purposing to ensure unfettered access to and freedom to operate in space and to provide vital capabilities to joint and coalition forces in peacetime and across the spectrum of conflict. The USSF was placed under the Department of the Air Force, see figure below, in a similar way to the U.S. Marine Corps placement within the Department of Navy. So the symbol for Navy and air traffic control is VV, and the symbol for Marines is VM. So that answers in my mind now a question that I had from years ago. What's Marines VM? Does make sense. Yeah, it does. Secretary of Defense, Deputy Secretary of Defense, Department of the Air Force, Secretary of the Air Force, Undersecretary of the Air Force. This is the chain of command. Chief of Staff of the Air Force, Chief of Space Operations, U.S. Air Force, and U.S. Space Force. Space Force within DoD and DAF. A great deal of USSF policy, doctrine, organization, resourcing, and manpower allocation is still to be determined and published. However, several key matters are fairly clear. Since the former Air Force Space Command was detached from the USAF to become the USAF, many units and capabilities of the new service are at least somewhat settled. Required materials DoD U.S. Space Force Fact Sheet 2020, read pages 1 through 5. Congressional Research Service Defense Primer, the United States Space Force 2020, read pages 1 through 3. Use of Forces and Space Operations Command. Unsurprisingly, most of the forces presented to, okay, pause. Here's what I would say. Normally, the last thing on the page, gosh, why? Normally, the last thing on the page is your required materials, and it just goes straight into another page. So when they designed this, they just kind of should have had more pages, in my opinion. Use of Forces and Space Operations Command. Unsurprisingly, most of the forces presented to U.S. Space Command, U.S. Spacecom, for operational purposes are drawn from the use of Space Operations Command. That, centered around the 614th Air Operations Center, represents the use of service contribution to USS Spacecom. Conveniently, the two-star Spock commander, whoa, Spock is what we're calling him? Space Operations Command, Spock. Man, there's a lot of Star Trek nerdery going on. Um, Conveniently, the two-star Spock commander is dual-headed as the USS Spacecom Combined Force Space Component Commander, the CIFSAC, with the CSPOC reporting to him or her. See below: President, SecDef, other combatant commands. USS Spacecom, Space Force, Army, Navy, Marines. Underneath the Space Force, Chief of Space Operations. Under Spacecom, the Joint Task Force, I don't know what Sierra Delta stands for. Combined Force Space Component Command. Combined Space Operations Center, CSPOC. And then below them is the tactical units. So this really doesn't mean a whole lot, um, honestly. But dual heading is what I see. USS Spacecom and the Chief of Space Operations right now is the dual headed position. So maybe the missions are too distinct and separate to combine, but to me, dual hat means that you probably consolidate efforts if one person can be in charge of both of them. Besides the 614th AOC, the SPOC comprises several operational space units. A summary of their mission sets and capabilities is here, worth reviewing. You should recognize a number of these capabilities from the Air 601 Sierra course. Have not taken that course yet, but it'd be interesting. And then there are 5 patches: Strength and Preparedness, 30th Space Wing, 45th Space Wing, Master of Space, 460th Space Wing. The 21st Space Wing, headquarters at Peterson Air Force Base, Colorado, is responsible for ground-based missile warning and space control operations. Ground-based missile warning is a mission largely involving detecting and tracking missile and satellite launches, accomplished with numerous radar stations in the U.S. and overseas. Many of the same radars are able to perform space control operations, mostly involving space surveillance of over 20,000 objects in orbit. That's a lot. A critical task to avoid orbital collisions. Ugh. So when are we going to learn to harness the force of gravity so we can keep things? Is that realistic to keep things static? Even though no, it's not realistic, because I guess I want to know scientifically if these things are in orbit, are they in a fixed position while the Earth is rotating? Huh. Is it like the Earth is spinning and the things is spinning, or is it like the moon? How it's I don't know. I don't even know if the moon is spinning at the same rate as the Earth is spinning. I just don't know. The 30th Space Wing, located at Vandenberg Air Force Base, California, oversees all U.S. satellite launches from the West Coast. Orbital mechanics make these launch sites useful for satellites going into a polar orbit, in which satellites pass nearly over the Earth's north and south poles. Satellites are lifted on rockets such as the Atlas V, Delta IV, Pegasus, Minotaur, and Falcon. ICBM tests are also periodically conducted from 30th Space Wing launch sites. The 45th Space Wing, located at Patrick Air Force Base, Florida, includes Cape Canaveral Air Station and adjoins NASA's John F. Kennedy Space Center. 45 Space Wing orchestrates all U.S. East Coast satellite launches. Various orbits can be reached from its launch sites, including geosynchronous, semi-synchronous, and highly elliptical. So, I guess that answers the question. They understood my question and they addressed it. Geosynchronous, so turn at the same time as the Earth. Semi-synchronous on some sort of I don't know what semi means. Halfway, so maybe I don't know. It's at a 180 degree with I don't know what semi-synchronous means. And highly elliptical. Um, these orbits require larger, heavier rockets than those used to put a satellite into polar orbit. 45th Space Wing uses all the rockets the 30th Space Wing does, plus the Delta IV Heavy, Falcon 9, Falcon Heavy, and Boeing X-37. The 50th Space Wing, headquartered at Schriever Air Force Base, Colorado, is it still? Hey,
You saying hello?
hey, sir, how you doing?
Doing well?
Good.
Want me to interrupt if you're on a phone call or?
No, I'm just going through ACSC, just powering through.
I don't want to interrupt that either.
Absolutely.
Good. Yeah, just checking in, seeing what's going on, walking around,
Yes, sir.
seeing what's up. So
How
it's
you
on
doing?
light on. I'm good. Can't complain. How's everybody at home?
Everybody, so last week, everybody was down sick.
Oh.
The kids, they had a camp the week before last at Space,
Mm-hmm.
at Starbase.
Okay.
They went there.
Yeah, Starbase.
Yes, that way.
Yeah.
And they had a blast. I noticed on Wednesday or Thursday, my oldest, he came home, he was kind of like sluggish. And then Friday, he woke up, he was like, Dad, I'm sick. Then he passed it on to his brother, and then they passed it on to the littles, and the littles passed it on to us. Yeah.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
everybody's back up now.
Good. Good.
School is on the horizon, so everybody's excited.
Good. Awesome. Awesome. All right, man. Well, I don't want to slow you down. I just figured I'd go ahead and say hello.
Yes, sir.
All right, man. Have a good one.
You too. Thank you. All right. The 50th Space Wing, headquartered at Schriever Air Force Base, Colorado, tracks and controls a number of satellite constellations used for command and control, warning, navigation, and communication. Two of the more familiar programs in their purview are GPS and the Air Force Satellite Control Network. Since satellite orbits are worldwide, there are 1150 Space Wing units worldwide that support its satellite C2 mission. I want to know about these 20,000 objects. What is happening up there? The 460th Space Wing, located at Buckley Air Force Base, Colorado, tracks and controls two specific satellite systems, both of which provide infrared launch detection and surveillance. The Defense Support Program and the newer space-based infrared system, 460th Space Wing systems, can also perform missions related to battlespace characterization and targeting worldwide. From the multicolored box labeled tactical units in the image highlighting the relation of U.S. Space Force and U.S. Space Command, you can tell units orchestrated by the CSPOC are not only drawn from the use of units listed above, but also from other services. These will be examined later in this section. Required materials include Combined Space Operations Center, CSPOC, U.S. Strategic Command, fact sheet, 2019, read pages 1 through 2. To learn more, click the image below to visit the Space Force Facebook page. I didn't know they had a Facebook page. I should have known that. I'm actually interested in this science, so I can get lost on that, so I don't need to go down that rabbit hole. I already know. To learn more, Visit their Facebook page, the Department of the Air Force Comprehensive Plan for the Organizational Structure of the U.S. Space Force 2020, Dolman Space Force Deja Vu 2019, pages 16 through 22, Nagali Launching the Space Force 2020. Oh, it's 2:30. I'm gonna do one more page. One more page. One more page. All right, one more. Not yet. Halfway through. Army, Navy, and Marine Corps capabilities. For some baseline familiarity, click the links below to visit the various services' central websites. Department of the Army, SEAL is here, the Department of the Navy, the Department of the Navy, Marine Corps, and the U.S. Coast Guard. Just from the look and feel of the websites, consider what seems to be important to this service. What facets of their culture do they want to highlight? How do they seem to view their operations? Is jointness apparent? What mindset can you discern from the various mission statements, quotes, and slogans in view? Understanding joint operations requires knowing what resources and capabilities the other services, Army, Navy, Marines, Coast Guard, bring to the table. It is also important to grasp how these forces are organized and presented to a JFC. Many of you are somewhat familiar with the U.S. Air Force's presentation constructs, for example, the Air Expeditionary Wing. You may be less familiar with the Carrier Strike Group, Marine Air Ground Task Force, MAGTF. I'm familiar with that because I remember Special MAGTF was out in an undisclosed location in Southwest Asia that I was responsible for while at absent. So I do remember them. Or Brigade Combat Team, BCT. Organizations such as these are crucial joint force elements, and airmen and space professionals should understand them at a basic level. Just as the Air Force maintains a repository of doctrine examined earlier in this lesson, each military service does the same for its distinct doctrine. Doctrine reveals a great deal about a service's priorities, mindset, and culture. What it thinks institutionally about the best way to organize and operate. Comprehending some key facets of other services' doctrine is important to grasp how they do business. To learn more, United States Army Doctrine Directorate, United States Navy Doctrine Library. Man, you can get lost. I can. This is a this is a rabbit hole. Like like just how long it's taking to get this spectrum of U.S. Air Force doctrine. I can imagine. Ugh. United States Marine Corps, Maritmes, and the United States Coast Guard doctrine. So all good stuff. Um, Unfortunately, it is probably a good time to stop the video. I went a little bit over 15 minutes, but all good. Be back for part 3.